Listen carefully, because what you are about to hear may shift something deep in your spirit. There are moments in life when a person begins to notice a strange pattern. Doors close before they even touch them. Opportunities disappear without explanation. People who once supported them suddenly turn against them. It feels like an invisible wall of rejection follows them everywhere. But hear this truth today. Rejection is not always a reflection of your worth. Sometimes it is evidence that there is a battle around your destiny. History shows us that many people who carried greatness also carried seasons of rejection. They were masked out, they were mocked, they were ignored. Yet the same people later walked into rooms where their presence could not be denied. Why? Because there comes a moment when a person stops accepting rejection as their identity and begins to confront it spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. You see, rejection works like a shadow. It feeds on doubt, fear, and silence. The more a person believes they're not enough, the stronger that shadow becomes. But the moment you rise with awareness, courage, and faith, something powerful begins to happen. Today, I want you to understand the power of 3 symbolic drops, 3 spiritual principles that can break cycles of rejection and silence those who secretly work against your progress. The first drop is the drop of awareness. Many people suffer for years because they never stop to recognize patterns in their lives. Awareness is powerful. When you begin to observe your life carefully, you start to notice the environments that drain you, the voices that discourage you, and the habits that weaken your confidence. Awareness is the moment your eyes open. And when your eyes open, the enemy of your destiny begins to lose his advantage. The second drop is the drop of courage. Rejection tries to convince you that you should stay small. It whispers that you should avoid opportunities because you might fail again. But courage says something different. Courage says, I may have been rejected before, but I will try again. I may have been ignored yesterday, but today I will stand with confidence. Courage confuses those who expected you to remain broken. Courage blinds the plans of those who secretly hoped you would quit. Every step of courage weakens the chains of rejection. The third drop is the drop of faith. Faith is the force that keeps a person moving, even when results are not visible yet. Faith allows someone to believe that their story is not finished, that their purpose still matters, and that their future can still change. When awareness, courage, and faith come together, something extraordinary happens. The weight of rejection begins to fall. The voices of doubt become quieter, and suddenly the same person who once felt invisible begins to walk with a new authority. Remember this: your destiny does not depend on the opinions of people who rejected you. Sometimes rejection is simply a redirection. Sometimes the closed door was protecting you from a place where your value would never have been recognized. And the same people who overlooked you may one day wonder how you rose so strong. But the transformation begins with a decision. A decision to refuse the identity of rejection. A decision to believe that your life carries purpose. A decision to rise with awareness, courage, and faith. So today, I challenge you, do not walk away from this message and return to the same mindset. Stand up in your spirit. Refuse the patterns that try to define you. Begin to move with confidence, speak with boldness, and believe that greater doors are ahead. Your story is not over. Your breakthrough may be closer than you think. If you believe your life is meant for more, then take action today. Strengthen your mind, guard your faith, and rise with courage. The moment you choose to stand up, rejection loses its power and your destiny begins to speak. But listen carefully, because this truth can change the way you see your life forever. Rejection is not your identity. Rejection is an event, not a definition. It is something that happens to you, not something that you are. Yet many people make a dangerous mistake. They take temporary rejection and turn it into a permanent label over their lives. One failed opportunity becomes "I always fail." One person saying no becomes "nobody wants me." Slowly, without realizing it, rejection moves from the outside into the inside, and it begins to shape the way a person sees themselves. But think about this for a moment. What if rejection is not proof that you are not valuable? What if rejection is simply part of the process that prepares people for something greater? Many times in life, the very people who are rejected the most were the same ones who later carried the greatest impact. Their stories did not begin with applause. Their journeys did not start with recognition. In fact, many of them started in places where nobody believed in them. Rejection has a way of testing the strength of a person's belief in themselves. When everything goes smoothly, confidence is easy. When people support you, encouragement is easy. But when doors close and voices around you say no, that is when the real battle begins. That is the moment when a person must decide whether they will accept rejection as their identity or reject the rejection itself. Because rejection tries to speak. It whispers thoughts that slowly poison, that says you should stop trying. It says you should lower your dreams. It says you should stay where you are, because stepping forward might only lead to more disappointment. And the dangerous thing about those whispers is that if a person listens long enough, they begin to believe them. But the truth is this: many times rejection is not about your worth. It is about timing, environment, or direction. Sometimes you are simply in a place that cannot recognize what you carry. A seed placed on concrete will never grow, not because the seed is weak, but because the environment cannot support its potential. In the same way, there are moments when a person is rejected simply because the place they are in cannot understand the value they bring. This is why it is so important to separate your identity from your experiences. What happened to you yesterday does not have the authority to define who you are today. A closed door does not cancel your purpose. A moment of rejection does not erase your potential. Your identity is not determined by the number of times people said no to you. In fact, many times rejection becomes a hidden form of protection. There are doors that close because they are leading in the wrong direction. There are opportunities that disappear because they would have limited your growth. There are spaces that reject you because you were never meant to stay there in the first place. Rejection can hurt, it can frustrate, it can make a person feel small for a moment. But it cannot determine your destiny unless you allow it to become the story you believe about yourself. Patterns are powerful. They are like invisible scripts running quietly in the background of a person's life. At first, they are difficult to see because they do not announce themselves loudly. They hide in daily habits, in repeated choices, in the type of people someone allows close to them, and even in the way a person thinks about themselves. Without awareness, a person can spend years walking in circles, repeating the same mistakes while hoping for different results. The truth is that many struggles continue not because a person lacks ability, but because they have never paused long enough to recognize the pattern behind the struggle. Awareness is the moment when a person stops reacting blindly and starts observing carefully. It is the moment when you step back and ask deeper questions about what is really happening in your life. Think about it. If someone constantly faces rejection in relationships, opportunities, or environments, there is often something deeper to observe. Sometimes the pattern may come from the type of environments they place themselves in. Sometimes it may come from believing they deserve less than they truly deserve. Sometimes it may come from repeating habits that quietly sabotage their own progress. Until a person becomes aware of these patterns, they remain trapped inside them. Awareness is powerful because it turns confusion into clarity. Suddenly, the things that once felt mysterious begin to make sense. The repeated disappointments start revealing lessons. The struggles begin to show their hidden messages. Instead of feeling like life is attacking you randomly, you began to see the structure behind what is happening. Many people never reach this stage because they are always reacting emotionally. When something goes wrong, they rush to blame others, blame circumstances, or blame fate. But growth begins when a person becomes honest enough to examine their own life with courage. Awareness requires humility. It requires the willingness to say, maybe there is something here I need to understand. When awareness enters your life, it is like turning on a light in a dark room. For years, you may have been walking through that room, bumping into the same obstacles again and again. Every step felt frustrating because you could not see what was blocking your path. But the moment the light turns on, everything changes. The obstacles were always there, but now you can see them clearly. And once you see them, you can move differently. Awareness also helps you recognize the people and influences around you. Some voices strengthen your confidence and push you toward growth, while other voices quietly plant doubt and discouragement. Without awareness, a person may keep listening to the wrong voices and wondering why their confidence keeps weakening. There are also internal patterns that operate inside the mind. The thoughts a person repeats daily eventually shape the direction of their life. Someone who constantly tells themselves they're not capable will start acting in ways that limit their own opportunities. Someone who believes failure is inevitable will often avoid risks that could lead to success. These internal patterns can quietly control a person's decisions for years until awareness finally exposes them. But awareness does something powerful. It gives you the ability to interrupt the cycle. The moment you recognize a pattern, you gain the power to change your response. Instead of repeating the same reaction, you begin to make intentional choices. Instead of walking blindly into the same situations, you start moving with understanding. This is why awareness is often the first turning point in transformation. Before strategies, before opportunities, before breakthroughs, there must be the moment when a person truly sees their life with clarity. Because the moment you begin to see the patterns that once controlled you, those patterns begin to lose their hidden power. Rejection has a subtle strategy. It does not always destroy people immediately. Instead, it tries to make them smaller, little by little. It convinces them to lower their voice, hide their talents, and step back from opportunities. Over time, the person who once carried bold dream becomes someone who simply tries to avoid disappointment. But here is the truth. Many people never realize the greatest victory rejection seeks is not the closed door itself. It is the moment when you decide to stop knocking on doors altogether. The moment a person accepts smallness as their new identity, rejection has succeeded. Because once someone stops believing they are capable of more, they begin to live far below their potential. They stop exploring possibilities. They stop challenging themselves. They start choosing safety over growth, comfort over courage, and silence over expression. Think about how many people in the world are living this way right now. Not because they lack ability, not because they lack intelligence of the bud, but because at some point in their lives, rejection convinced them that playing small was the safest choice. But greatness has never been discovered in small thinking. Every meaningful achievement begins with a decision to refuse limitation. It begins when a person looks at the disappointments of the past and chooses not to allow those moments to dictate their future. Refusing to stay small means reclaiming the courage to dream again, even when past experiences try to silence those dreams. This does not mean pretending rejection never happened. It means refusing to allow rejection to control the direction of your life. The difference is powerful. One mindset says, I was rejected, therefore I must step back. The other mindset says, I was rejected, therefore I must grow stronger. When you refuse to stay small, you begin to approach life differently. Instead of avoiding opportunities because of fear, you start stepping toward them with determination. Instead of hiding your ideas because someone once dismissed them, you begin expressing them with confidence. Instead of allowing criticism to silence you, you use it as motivation to sharpen your abilities. There is something extraordinary about a person who refuses to shrink after rejection. It sends a message to the world that their confidence is not controlled by temporary outcomes. It shows that their belief in themselves is stronger than the opinions that tried to discourage them. Many people misunderstand confidence. They think confidence comes from constant success, but true confidence is often built through repeated setbacks. Each time someone rises again after disappointment, their inner strength becomes stronger. Each time they try again after being told no, their courage becomes more unshakable. Refusing to stay small also requires changing the way you see yourself. The mind has a powerful influence over behavior. If a person secretly believes they are meant to live an average life, they will unconsciously avoid actions that could lead to extraordinary results. But when someone begins to see themselves as capable of growth, progress, and impact, their actions start aligning with that belief. Small thinking creates small actions. Small actions create small results. And those small results reinforce the belief that smallness is all that is possible. But the moment someone decides to think bigger, act bolder, and move forward despite fear, the cycle begins to change. Opportunities that once seemed impossible start appearing. Skills begin to develop. Confidence begins to grow. Refusing to stay small is not about arrogance. It is about recognizing that your potential deserves to be exposed fully, not hidden behind the fear of rejection. It is the decision to stand up mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, even when past experiences try to convince you to remain quiet and invisible. This is where courage becomes one of the most powerful forces a person can possess. Courage has a unique effect on the world around you. It disrupts expectations. It surprises people who thought they had already predicted your future. When someone faces rejection and disappears quietly, nobody is shocked. When someone fails and never tries again, it confirms what many people already assumed. But when a person rises again with determination, when they refuse to stay down, something unusual happens. People begin to pay attention. Courage sends a message that cannot be ignored. It says that the setbacks did not break you. It says that the closed doors did not stop you. It says that the opinions of others do not have the authority to define your path. Every time you stand up after being pushed down, you create a moment that challenges the expectations of those watching your journey. Many people think courage means the absence of fear, but that is not the truth. Courage often appears in the middle of fear. It shows up when doubt is present, when uncertainty is real, and when the outcome is not guaranteed. Courage is the decision to move forward even while the mind is filled with questions. This is why courage can confuse those who secretly hoped you would remain discouraged. When someone expects you to give up, they prepare themselves to see you disappear quietly. They imagine that the rejection you faced will weaken your motivation and silence your ambition. But when you rise again, when you continue trying, when you continue improving yourself, it disrupts that expectation completely. Courage also changes how people perceive you. When someone consistently stands up after setbacks, it demonstrates resilience. It shows strength of character. It reveals that their determination is deeper than temporary obstacles. Over time, even the people who doubted you begin to recognize that your persistence is real. There is something powerful about persistence combined with courage. Each attempt may not succeed immediately, but every attempt sends a signal to the world that you are still present, still determined, and still moving forward. Courage turns failure into training. It transforms setbacks into preparation for future victories. Consider how many opportunities are missed simply because people stop too early. The fear of another rejection convinces them to step back just when they were approaching a breakthrough. The fear of embarrassment convinces them to remain silent when they had an idea worth sharing. Courage interrupts this pattern. It pushes a person to try one more time, to apply again, to speak again, to stand again. Courage also has an internal effect. Each time you act bravely, your mind begins to reshape the story it tells about you. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who avoids challenges, you begin to recognize yourself as someone who confronts them. That identity shift is powerful because the way you see yourself influences the choices you make every day. People who act with courage often discover abilities they did not realize they possessed. Strength grows through action. Confidence grows through experience. The more a person steps forward despite fear, the more they expand the boundaries of what they believe is possible for their life. And when others observe this transformation, it creates confusion for those who expected weakness. They see someone who was once rejected now moving with confidence. They see someone who faced setbacks now demonstrating resilience. The same individuals who once underestimated your potential begin to realize that your determination cannot be easily discouraged. Courage is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it appears in quiet decisions, choosing to try again, choosing to learn from mistakes, choosing to continue when progress feels slow. But even these quiet acts of courage carry enormous power because they keep a person moving forward when stopping would have been easier. The answer to these questions is something powerful yet invisible: faith. Faith is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal growth and transformation. Many people think faith only matters when things are going well, but true faith becomes visible when circumstances are uncertain. It appears in the moments when results are delayed, when progress seems slow, and when the outcome is not yet visible. There are seasons in life where everything feels clear and predictable. Opportunities appear quickly. People support your efforts, and the path forward seems obvious. In those seasons, it is easy to feel confident, but there are also seasons where the opposite happens. Doors close, efforts seem unnoticed. The progress you expected takes far longer than you imagined. These are the moments where faith becomes essential. Without faith, discouragement grows quickly. When a person focuses only on immediate results, every delay feels like failure. Every closed door feels like a final verdict. Over time, the lack of visible progress begins to drain motivation. Slowly, the mind begins to question whether continuing the journey is even worth the effort. But faith interrupts that process. Faith allows a person to continue moving even when the road ahead is not fully visible. It creates the ability to believe that the effort you are investing today is building something meaningful, even if the results have not yet appeared. Faith understands that growth often happens quietly, before it becomes visible publicly. Think about a seed placed in the soil. For a long time, nothing appears above the ground. From the outside, it looks as if nothing is happening. Someone who lacks patience might assume the seed has failed to grow. But beneath the surface, something important is taking place. Roots are forming. Strength is developing. Preparation is happening in a hidden place before the plant ever becomes visible. In many ways, personal progress works the same way. There are seasons where your learning, your effort, and your persistence are shaping you in ways that are not immediately noticeable. Skills are forming. Confidence is developing. Understanding is expanding. These internal changes often happen long before the world begins to recognize the results. Faith gives you the patience to continue during those hidden seasons. It reminds you that just because something has not happened yet does not mean it will never happen. It reminds you that delays do not always mean denial. Sometimes the time between effort and outcome is simply the period where preparation is taking place. Faith also protects the mind from destructive doubt. Doubt focuses on what has not worked yet. It magnifies every obstacle and every disappointment. It creates a narrative that suggests success is unlikely. If a person allows doubt to dominate their thinking, it becomes extremely difficult to maintain motivation. Faith challenges that narrative. Instead of focusing only on past disappointments, faith directs attention toward future possibilities. It encourages a person to believe that their current circumstances are not permanent. It creates the mindset that effort today can produce transformation tomorrow. People who develop strong faith often become remarkably resilient. They do not collapse easily under pressure because their motivation is not dependent only on immediate outcomes. They understand that meaningful achievements often require time, persistence, and repeated attempts. Faith also influences the actions a person chooses to take. When someone believes their efforts can eventually produce success, they are more willing to continue learning, practicing, and improving. They keep preparing themselves even when opportunities have not yet arrived. Because of this, faith quietly builds momentum over time. Each day of continued effort adds another layer of experience. Each attempt brings new lessons. Each step forward strengthens the belief that progress is still possible. But here is a question that many people never stop to ask. Why should someone else's opinion have the authority to decide the direction of your life? Every person you meet carries their own perspective, their own experiences, their own limitations in understanding the world. When someone looks at you and makes a judgment about what you can or cannot become, they are often speaking from the boundaries of their own mindset. Their opinion is not a prophecy. It is not a final decision about your future. It is simply a reflection of what they believe is possible. Yet many people unknowingly give enormous power to these opinions. A teacher once says a student is not talented, and the student begins to believe they are incapable. A friend laughs at someone's dream, and that dream quietly fades away. A stranger criticizes someone's idea, and suddenly the person stops sharing their creativity with the world. Over time, these opinions build invisible walls that limit a person's potential. The danger is not just the words themselves. The real danger is when those words begin to shape your identity. When someone accepts negative opinions as truth, they start adjusting their behavior to match those expectations. They avoid opportunities that seem too big. They silence their ideas before anyone else has the chance to hear them. They settle for comfort instead of growth because they fear proving the critics right. But your destiny cannot be determined by the limited vision of others. Think about how often people have been wrong in their judgments throughout history. Many individuals who later achieved remarkable success were once dismissed, underestimated, or ignored. The world is full of stories where someone's potential was overlooked simply because others could not imagine what that person might eventually become. Opinions are often shaped by familiarity. People expect you to remain the same person they have always known. When you start aiming for something greater, it disrupts their expectations. Some people react to that disruption with support, but others respond with doubt or criticism because your growth challenges the boundaries of what they believe is possible. If you allow those reactions to control your decisions, you will spend your entire life adjusting yourself to fit within other people's comfort zones. True growth requires a different mindset. It requires the courage to listen respectfully to advice while still maintaining ownership of your direction. It requires understanding that feedback can sometimes be useful, but it should never replace your own vision for what your life can become. Your life is not a democracy where every opinion receives equal authority. Some voices may guide you wisely, but many voices will simply reflect their own fears, their own insecurities, or their own limited experiences. Learning to recognize the difference is essential for anyone who wants to move forward with confidence. When you begin to detach your identity from external opinions, something powerful happens internally. Your decisions start coming from conviction rather than approval. Instead of constantly seeking the validation, you begin focusing on growth. Instead of adjusting your dreams to avoid criticism, you start strengthening your skills and determination. This shift transforms the way you approach challenges. Criticism no longer feels like a final judgment. It becomes information you can evaluate rather than a command you must obey. Doubt from others no longer has the power to stop your progress because your motivation is anchored in your own belief about what you can achieve. The people who accomplish meaningful things in life often share one important quality. They refuse to let the limitations of other people's thinking become the boundaries of their own possibilities.